Okay, so I'm gonna move to open the public hearing. Do I have a second? Okay, we're gonna do a roll call. All in favor, Joe,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
I say yes, okay. So this is what I'd like to do. I want to give a little historic district 101. I want to have a presentation by the property owner, 22 Union LLC. Then some questions by the Historic District Commission to the applicant, then open for public comments. Based on the attendance, I'd like to ask that we limit the comments and questions to 3 minutes a person. If we have time, then we'll come back to people if they have further questions, but let's start with 3 minutes per person. If you hear your question or comment being made, then you hold your question till all unique questions have been posed or comments. And then we'll come back to questions that may have already been written. I really would like everyone to be respectful of each other, of the applicant, of the commission process. And if you want to submit comments by email, not stand up and make a comment here, you may. We already have had emails from Lorraine Iavani of Pine Street on May 4th and May 30th, addressing this project and a range of other downtown issues. And also from Sarah Pierce has submitted a petition to stop the demolition. She submitted emails on May 8th and June 4th. I'd really like to end before 9 o'clock, if possible. And then allow the applicant and the commission to reflect on comments and questions, and then continue the meeting next week, if everybody's open to that. So you can hear what has to be said, and then come back, and if you'd like to make responses at that time, do that. That work? That work for you guys? Okay, great. Okay, so I'm gonna do a quick 101 on the historic districts. In 1960, the state passed a law enabling towns and cities to create historic districts and historic district commissions. It is Mass General Law, Chapter 40C. We've all heard 40A, 40B, down the alphabet to 40C. The purpose states that this chapter is to promote the educational, cultural, economic, and general welfare of the public through the preservation and protection of the distinctive characteristics of buildings and places significant in the history of the Commonwealth and its cities and towns or their architecture, and through the maintenance and improvement of settings for such buildings and places, and the encouragement of design compatible therewith. That's section 2. Section 7 is entitled Factors to be Considered by the Commission, and this is all still in the state law. And this sort of restates that last sentence. The commission shall not make any recommendation or requirement except for the purpose of preventing developments incongruous to the historic aspects or the architectural characteristics of the surroundings and the historic district. So pursuant to that, in 1975, Manchester voted by town meeting to accept the historic district bylaw as part of the general bylaws and created the historic district and the historic district commission. That's Article 16 in the general bylaws. Under this bylaw and in accordance with Chapter 40C, the commission is charged with hearing applications for certificates of appropriateness, certificates of non-compliance, and certificates of hardship. These are submitted, these applications, when property owners wish to make alterations that are visible from the public way in order to receive a building permit. The historic district guidelines were produced to advise property owners and the commission. Ideally, the HDC and property owners are partners in the stewardship of historic resources. The guidelines are just that, they are not regulatory. Zoning is the purview of the planning board and the zoning board of appeals, with compliance falling under the purview of the building inspector. So that's Historic Districts 101. You guys are up.
I'm gonna share my screen, which will project up there, and you guys might want to.
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Madam Chairman, for going through that and giving us a little lesson on the District's 101 regulations. I actually find it interesting that it was enacted in 1975, just part of my presentation showing the history of the site. But I wanted to start just introducing who we are, just so you know who purchased the property and who are the owners. So myself, I'm Chris Vance, partner on community development, and Jim Longley, who's also another partner. We're both North Shore residents. We've lived here for 15 plus years. So we frequently visit Manchester. We love the downtown community. We live in a nearby local town. So, this is something that is close to us. I'm also an architect. So for me, the design, the details, designing and building something that's high character and class is really important. So it's a very significant project for myself and for both Jim and I. So I'm going to start a little bit with the history here. Let me just go to this. So before I jump into this plot plan here from 1929, I'll talk a little bit about how we got where we are today. Back in September, we purchased the property. We were excited about the opportunity to purchase the building and analyze it and look at what the possibilities for a development there would be. We started by looking at saving the existing structure. I brought my structural engineer, my facade consultant, because I'm sure you're all aware as you walk by the building that it's really deteriorating. And I have some images later to show, but it's really kind of beyond disrepair, and it's really not stable for itself. If you look at today's structural code, it's actually wouldn't meet code. And so we can't really alter the building at all without significantly tearing it down or making some major adjustments to it. So back in November, we had presented our original plan to the HDC as an informal, start to understand the process and understand the guidelines and the input that get from them. Our original concept was to raise the building and push the new structure back into the hillside. And that was for multiple reasons. You dive into the zoning code. We're only allowed to go 2.5 stories, and there are setbacks and restrictions. So when we build something new, we have to meet all the zoning code. And also that a residence, 2 families allowed by right, and or a commercial use by right. There's no mixed use zoning bylaw. So we had originally planned to have a little parking plaza using the original curb cut. You would pull into the site, there'd be some garages underneath, and then 2 units, townhouse style, living above. Through sort of meeting with town officials, hearing feedback, meeting with the butters, it seemed like that wasn't a desired design that would fit in with the character of downtown Manchester. So today we actually have a revised plan that we plan to present. This has been submitted to the board that we circulated around for everyone to review. But I'll walk through it now. So here starting, this is a plot plan from 1929. So this was before your historic commission would have had jurisdiction over actually demolishing this building because the cargo building, which we know was built in 1940. So this single family that was actually pushed back is very similar to 18 Union Street, which is pushed off of the curb, and there was a single family residence that was demolished, and what we see today as cargo was built in 1940. I'm sure you're all very familiar with the site. On the left side is the curb cut with a rather steep incline drive that accesses parking in the rear. There's also an easement on the property to allow 18 Union to have access to their parking spaces in the rear of the lot. We're sort of sandwiched in between two properties and also built pretty significantly into the hillside. And you can see that from the facade, there are many structural issues. One being that at some point in its life, the facade was actually coated with a paint that wasn't appropriate for a precast stone. So it's actually locking moisture into that and popping off and deteriorating from the inside. So it's really beyond repair at this point. You can also see some of the inside photos here, just over years of sort of neglect and not keeping up with maintenance. The roof has been compromised. It's actually collapsing in. There's a significant amount of water that's been pouring into the building. On the left side, there's a full basement. It's regularly flooding. It just hasn't been designed to handle all the runoff that comes off of the hill from the property above. So some pumps turn off, the whole thing floods, fills up, and ran into multiple times so far already. And so it's just not designed appropriately. We did have the structural engineer look at ways to mitigate this, if we could put in some new footings and so forth, but it's really beyond a point of saving. So we made the decision that we are going to take the building down. So we started to look at a new design and studying the architecture and the vernacular along Union Street and Central Street down Beach Street. And what I think is really unique about Manchester is that it's an eclectic mix of architecture types. I mean, if you look at these images here, there isn't really one style you can say that makes up Manchester's architecture. If you look at 11 Central, mansard roof, it's got a shingled roof. You move your way down, you have brick, you have a whole mix of materials, granite, wood. So it's a really an eclectic mix, and there's single story, rubber roofs, there's pitched roofs, there's gambrel roofs, there's colonials. So, it's a big mix of different architecture. So this is our proposed plan here. So this is 2 units that are townhouses. And it's a conforming building, meaning that once we take down cargo, we have to build something that's conforming to your zoning bylaws. So here I show in blue the existing outline of cargo. So the new structure is actually smaller than the existing footprint of cargo. See here. And we are meeting all the setbacks. So we have a 5-foot setback from the front property line, 10-foot setbacks from the side, and then we have a 25-foot setback from the rear. What we are proposing is that eliminating any parking, any garage doors on the front of the building, and that the parking will take place in the rear, which it does now. And we are proposing 2 garage spots with 2 surface level parking as well. So here's the front elevation. So we are using mansard style, Second Empire mix architecture type here. The reason for that is, one, the mansard roof allows a lot of livable space. So because we are limited to 2.5 stories, we really have to max out what we can build because the first level is buried into the hillside. So it makes it difficult to have nicer spaces that you can have down in that backer end of the building. And what we've done is we wanted to really capture the essence of that streetscape with the retail sort of storefront presence. So let me jump to this image here. It's zoomed in, but you can see that at the pedestrian level, we incorporated more storefront type windows. One thing I love about Manchester is all the flower boxes. So I thought that was a key element. So we incorporated those on those storefront windows. And now we just have front doors of the units that are along Union Street, along the sidewalk there. And we're also proposing here in materials that we have a podium that's made out of granite block, which ties into 18 Union Street. So it sort of continues that streetscape as you're walking. And then we have paneled storefront windows at the first floor. And as you work your way up to the second floor, which would be on the first floor living levels, we have box bay windows with clapboard. And I'm showing some examples of some details here on these upper images. And then we're proposing that we would have small roof decks up on the half story, which are over those box bay windows, enjoying the views of downtown Manchester. And that we'd have some small dental details, which you can see are accented here in these images. And then the asphalt shingle roof. The windows will be full simulated by lights. We're proposing 4/1, as you see here. And then incorporating clapboard and some shingles as well. And you can see the scale from this image here really fits into the streetscape. 18 Union, which is on the left, you can see it's significantly higher than what we're proposing. We could go higher. We worked with the butters to help minimize maxing out the height. So we didn't want to take away from anybody's sort of view corridor from up above. And you can see as you work down Union Street, you have the colonial, basically 3.5-story building that's significantly higher. So the scale really works into the existing site. And what I also love about the design is that it really activates that pedestrian experience because the building is undulating along. So, currently if you walk by Cargo, the sidewalk's very narrow. It's more of a pass through. It's not really a stopping point. So this is actually opening that up. You'll have some vegetation. So when you're connecting, you're going up to Town Hall or down to Coffees, you'll be able to really have a more activated pedestrian streetscape. And this is the last slide that I have. We'll go to questions. I do have this printed as well. I'll just put up that we have. Sure, if we have any technology issues, so rough is just.
Can we start with commission questions? Got a question?
Yeah, okay, thank you very much for the presentation. And I'm looking at the eclectic collection of architecture that we have in our town. I think eclectic is the word, there's a little bit of everything, but it is all of a kind of a certain period, 1850 to 1910 or 20 seems to be the case with most of these buildings. You've selected the mansard roof for obviously a number of reasons that make sense given the design that you want. Got a question about the facade rhythm or as you move along the sidewalk. Now, you've got a 5-foot setback. Is that that's what's required?
It is, yep.
Of course, the building as it stands has no setback.
0, yep.
Okay. So how are you handling that walkway down there? Are you putting some sort of a wall down there? Is it just going to be kind of open walkway with a 5-foot setback or what?
Well, as you can see here on the site plan, there's so for the 2 unit entries, there will be a small little portico with a walkway connecting to the sidewalk. And it's, as you move up Union towards Beach Street, there is a slope, which we've accommodated in sort of the design. So it will be graded out. So the right unit will be slightly higher than the first floor elevation, vegetated along the sidewalk.
Okay, so that this is sort of a low wall of some sort, I guess, then.
No, just follow the natural
Follow the
grade.
natural.
Yeah, it's maybe a little hard to see, but
Yeah, I can't
This-
really.
the street level, we have marked at 23 feet.
Yeah.
So this entry door is actually lower than this entry door because there's a slight grade as you work your way up Union Street towards Beach Street. So we just natural value. I think it shows it. Yeah,
So I guess what you're asking, John, is when you see this veneer stone on the
Yes,
scheme, is that the
That's right.
building or is that a wall?
Oh, sorry, that's the building foundation. Yes.
That's what
Okay,
I'm looking
so
at.
there's no wall. You
There's
just
no wall.
walk right.
Yeah, that's the building foundation.
And the setback, when you get next to the driveway, is closer to 10 feet. I know that driveway goes up right away.
Yeah, we're actually proposing to go 12 feet wider. And we've also pulled that corner of the building back so that when you're making a left-hand turn, it's safe. I mean, right now it's.
Okay, so you can see what's going in.
Yeah, yeah, the visual, yeah, trying to pull out of there is quite difficult.
The significant wall that have to be built there, you're probably up 3 feet or more. At a 12-foot setback, I think, or 10 or 12-foot setback from the street.
On the street, yeah, oh, yes, along that wall, yeah.
Along that wall, it
Yes.
goes up right away, and I don't know what the grade is, but it's pretty steep.
Yep.
Okay. Those are questions I have for right now, but I'll be back.
Go ahead, Rich.
I have a few. I guess the first is, how, I guess in the next stage, we'll get, if we were to go forward, we would get some better sense of what this facade looks like as it curves. I mean, when we look at this, elevation, it looks it's straight, but of course it's not straight. You've got a bend out there and an indentation in the middle.
Yes, get the roof.
So that model, would be nice to be able to see that model really that was made it easier to understand how it's gonna feel on the street. My next question has to do really with the finish and materials and what the level of what the quality in the building would eventually be, because I think whatever the design is, that's going to mean a lot. I noticed the shingles there, whereas a slate or slate-like would be what you would sort of expect in that period. You've specified a particular certain tea product. I don't remember what that product is,
Yeah, it's just a Panama architectural shingle.
but it's an asphalt shingle. And the facade materials, I assume the windows are internal muntins as well as snap-ins. They're not just,
No, we're full simulated divided lights so that they simulate a full divided glass.
right, so they have an internal, they have a glass muntin in between
They do.
the two thermophane doors. Yeah, and the the materials for the panels, columns, whatever the siding is that you're using on the second floor, what's that intended to be?
So for the siding, we were proposing a fiber cement siding. Yeah, RD type of product, just because it's durable glass. And then for the panels, some sort of MDF or that be painted.
Really? Okay. And other materials in use here on this cornice construction?
So yeah, we'd probably use some sort of Vycon, decor. And we'd be wrapping the columns in either Acre or AZAC material.
And the railings in the balconies are wood, I see specified?
Yep.
And the, I see the doors, and then I'm a little confused by what is panel and what is window. I guess these panels with the square and two rectangles below it are the, are some kind of paneling? Like the far left, they're number 2?
Yeah, so we're the smaller rectangles that would be paneling, and then the larger is glass.
And that's MDF as well?
The-
What is the
panels.
material on the paneling?
Yeah,
And the finish of these balconies on the top where you have the curved roof, what, and the dormer roofs, what is that? Is that metallic? Is that?
are you talking about the arch there? Yeah, that would be a metallic standing seam metal.
It would be metal?
Yeah.
But probably haven't made that decision yet.
No, that's what we planned on.
What kind of metal?
Is aluminum.
Some sort of anodized material that's
Yes.
And the balconies on the third floor, are they also wood?
Those be wood, correct, yeah, with a, on sleepers, the rubber roof.
Okay, that's,
I was wondering if you could elaborate on the texture of the vinyl siding. We typically review that case by case. That's not a material that we typically approve in regards to the historic district. Can you speak to what that looks and feels like?
So it's not vinyl.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a cementitious material. So it's a composite material that you can either get smooth or has a wood grain texture on it. One of the brand names is Party Plank, which is used quite a bit because pests can't eat at it. It doesn't require the painting. It doesn't break down like wood, so it's a very durable, long-lasting material.
So your plan would be to not paint the building. It would be whatever color that composite material is.
We would paint it as well. Yeah.
Joe, do you have? So,
I'll yield to other members. I just want to hear what questions are being asked. I had questions in mind. They've been repeated, so I'll just wait till everybody finishes.
okay. I have a quick question about the doors. Are those glass doors or are they panel doors?
Glass doors. Yeah, I didn't show the floor plan, but we're planning for a large, sort of home occupation office space that would be on the lower level. So that would give you a piece of, not retail, but, it would be for professional that could have a small sign, and be part of that, retail front. That's a continuation.
So is that like a separate entrance almost? You walk in, there's an office, then you can go up to the living space?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Yes,
Go ahead. You go ahead.
oh, so yeah, the way, I didn't show the floor plans, but we're designing it so that it could be a home occupation space at the lower level on the streetscape. So that's where we have the larger fixed panel windows and the glass door. So you can enter in through the glass door, get a small little vestibule. On the right side would be an office space for service provider professional, which would, ties into the retail.
So there's a walkway connecting these two entrances.
Yes,
So the 5-foot setback is going to be occupied by 2.5 to 3 feet sidewalk connecting two entrances.
it's one entrance into the building.
Yeah, and then there's another sidewalk that runs alongside the building to the other entrances.
No, no.
No, it's one entrance into the building, and then there'd be a door, that
Oh, an interior.
internal door, one to the office, one that would then go up to your.
Thank you.
So the large windows are really to facilitate that possible use,
Exactly, yes.
as well as perhaps to mimic what's already there, because they got very large windows in cargo. Okay.
Is there any timeline construction wise?
Well, I think that depended on the process.
So say you get a building permit, how long does this take to build?
This would take probably about 10 to 12 months. And our goal would be to minimize disruption, so, start demolition in off season, so that we don't really disrupt summer flow. And we do have some staging space up on the hill, so most of it we can do from, the back, take the front, pull towards the back.
This is not directly germane, I guess, but I'm just curious. You said there's a basement there now. I am guessing you're not going to be using a basement going in the construction. Be on what kind of a foundation?
It'd be slab on grade for the first.
My question is on the color windows. Are they 6x1? What size are they? They look like they're in keeping with the design that's from the abutters. So
Are you talking about the grid pattern or are you talking about the actual physical size of the window?
the pattern size of the window, but
Yeah, so they're double hung windows that we're proposing and they would have maybe a 4/1, so 4 panes over one.
okay. Thank you.
Do the windows on the first floor open out? Are those casement or any other night, or are they fixed?
We were proposing that those would be fixed with operable awnings.
Fixed awnings?
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you could explain the Second Empire a bit more for us, why, I understand that you wanted to build it taller and make that more of a livable space. But can you help us understand contextually why you chose that for our historic district, given that there aren't many instances of this in Manchester?
Yeah, I've actually always really loved 11 Central. And so when I first started thinking about design of the project, I naturally gravitated toward 11 Central, which had a lot of the same features as what we're proposing here with the large dormers, mansard roof, similar separation of first, second, third, or half-story floor. So you have the three roofs. Zoom in. But here you have large windows at the retail sort of pedestrian level, boxed bays, and sort of roof with arched windows, so that it was really pulling from 11 Central. I also think that we didn't really want to repeat at 40 Union when creating sort of a tall wall along the street there. And so this really gives some undulation, some relief to the facade. So to me, it's more dynamic, more active than a traditional colonial style.
John?
Okay, I'm just looking, 11, was that 11 Union, you said? That's 4/1, I guess, windows,
Central.
or Central rather,
I don't know about that.
or 2.
That looks like 2/2, yeah. Yeah,
Was that 2/2? Frankly, all of those designs kind of exist in the various buildings. I mean, 6/6 is the most common, but for this particular design, it's not an appropriate.
no, I think if we were designing it like colonial, a 6/6.
Yes, that's correct, but this is, that's, and it's a little bit different. I mean, I'm fine with 4/1. Looks good. Okay.
Any more?
No questions.
Anyone? Still no Paul? Okay, anybody here? If we open it up for public comment and questions, can you stand up because the speakers, I guess, are in the ceiling or the microphone in the ceiling? And state your name and address, please.
I'm Scott Fulver. I'm not willing to stand up. The sound's gonna carry there anyway.
Okay.
Just look at this for all of you. I mean, so I'm Scott Fulver. I'm the budding neighbor at 18 Union Street. Nice to meet you, Chris. Good to see you, Adam. Nice to meet you too. My first question is to HDC. Do you care about the back of the house or the building? Like it's stylistically?
If it's not visible from the public way, no.
Okay. Then my interest obviously is the side of the building, the rear building. You're not part of that decision, so I'm just gonna go along for the ride. Thank you.
I'm sure you're welcome to share your comments with him about the back.
Well, my comments are simply, where are the folks gonna grill? How you're gonna build this building when you really just have 2 parking spaces and a driveway that's gonna be outside your building. I don't understand how you're gonna stage it, demolish it, all those things. So I think that's a big factor. And, you know, my concern is, are there gonna be children's toys left out back? Are they gonna have grills, people in the driveway? Obviously, things that are gonna truly affect me because it's right on my dining room, these back doors. So I'm just trying to be aware of what's about to happen. And I'm not anti-development, I'm just want good stuff,
Thank you.
just like the rest of the town has.
Hi, Sandy Rogers, 82 Old Essex Road. If you can pull up one of the first graphics where you show the building itself. I'm trying to understand this angle, especially to the left. So before this one. This. That one. So to me, the front looks a bit disjointed with, I know it's a circular building right now. And you show the circle in the circular arc to the front of the property. But the diagram that we see of the full building doesn't, it sort of looks more like a general facade of a building that's flat. Yet I'm seeing a lot of different angles there. Could you please describe that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this angle here on the left is very deliberate, so that we can really open up the view corridor as you're coming down the driveway.
Right.
We really can't do anything about this large retaining wall on 18 Union, but the right-hand turn is a little easier than the left-hand turn. So we deliberately pull that facade back to open that view corridor up to make it safe as you're traveling up and down the driveway. So the facade in the elevation looks flat because it's a straight on elevation, but if you look at this roof line, the building actually jogs along here. So this this little white, can you see my cursor up there? Yeah, that's the bay that's projected out to here. And then this is a little recess that's an outdoor space for unit on the left here. So that's this space here where the railing is. These are the two box bays that are popping out, and then there's occupiable space, outdoor space. So this side here is the one that's canted back.
So if you go back to that diagram, it just looks like one building is jutting out more and at an angle. Or the other unit is back a little further. It's not really a contiguous look.
Yeah, we're following the property line, not in a exact, path of an arc, but it's as you're moving down Union towards Central, building is following that.
So we're gonna be seeing a lot of corners and none of them are actually gonna be like sort of a smooth look to it. They're gonna.
You're not gonna see a lot of corners. It might be a little hard to read from this elevation, but it's sort of two boxes that are intersecting. That's perpendicular too. So this, if you look at that as like a box, this is a box. It's interstitial space that's connected.
Thank you.
Hi, Sarah Creighton, 37 Parker Street, and I'm speaking as myself, not for the planning board. I just wanted to, the guidelines say that changes to existing buildings should be directed to retaining or restoring the original design. It's of great importance when changes are proposed, proposing properties having historic value, etc. And I'm wondering if the commission ever thinks of that definition more broadly than just the aesthetic, because I think what many people are concerned about is the fact that the historic design is commercial property on the first floor. And I think that it's the idea of having the home office, I understand, is a great improvement, but that's totally subject to the property residents deciding to have a home office there. And alternatively, the zoning allows with special permit to have 3 units. You could have the first, on the first floor be commercial, and the other 2, we don't allow mixed use, but I strongly, again, my opinion, that you would probably receive favorable input, at least from what I've heard, if you approached it that way. And I would urge the commission to think about that historic use as part of design. And I will also commend you strongly for moving the parking to the back. So I think that's really fabulous and a much improved design to put the parking in the back, keep the building along the street. And then the last comment is that hardy plank and ASIC are not historic materials. If you want to see hardy plank, go over to the hardware store, and their outbuilding and hardware store itself is, I believe, is hardy plank. And it's a very uniform material. It's high embodied carbon material. And it's not a historic material, and ASIC is essentially a plastic wood. We all can appreciate the fact that they are durable and they will last a long time, but they are not historic materials. Thank you.
I'll respond to that. We have allowed those materials just because of the postage.
Matt Jensen, 17 Mascanoma. It's a vast improvement, especially moving the parking to the back from the previous design. But you're going for the second Empire Revival style. Had you looked at, I noticed you showed the plot, the site plan of the previous Victorian house, which was torn down in 1929. Have you seen the photographs of the original house, and did that influence the design at all?
Not seeing the
Okay.
original photographs.
I just have some questions. If you're going for the style, just a couple suggestions or something to consider. I noticed the 2 smaller dormers are shed right now. These 2 guys here, and all the other dormers in this style in town need peaked, right? So something to consider there. And also, I think some of the details you have to, if you're like the style of the columns for the base and the capitals and the brackets, if you are influenced by 11 Central, it is the other design, I think you have to look at those details closely to see how you're gonna pull it off in synthetic material that's still gonna be, you're walking a fine line to try to make a building in this revival style that you can pull it off with the right detailing. So that's also something to look at. It like, and I think John brought it up, the 2/2 is more traditional for this style. If you look around town for that period, so that's also something to consider. And also the materials. I mean, traditionally, I don't know what the other roofs were, but I would suggest considering like a synthetic slate also. Like the rubber slate, which has the look of slate, but
Yeah, we just did one on another project and. But
yeah,
my opinion.
okay. That's fine here. And and also look at the spacing of your clapboards also. you know. So that's my 2 cents. Oh, the west elevation, you're not showing it. It's a critical elevation as you're approaching. So I think you have to show the west elevation, the one to the left on the driveway side. And how that, because that's, as you're coming into town, that's gonna be a critical view of this whole building. That's it.
In support of that, I need a lot more detail. Both materials and into the finer details, these columns and the sides, to be able to really have a sense that I know what it's going to be. Also, it's a good thing to point out that a good many of the windows are not even 4x4. They're large, single glazed panels.
Yes, I'll know.
Both the 3rd floor and the first floor, which is, well, we discussed that.
Yeah, well,
Okay, so we have some Questions on Zoom. Sandy Bodman Turner.
Hi, I'm Sandy Bodmer Turner at 89 School Street. And I wanted to say thank you to Chris for putting the parking in back. It's a huge improvement. I'm seconding Sarah's comment there. But I'd like to understand, could you please go to the streetscape slide? Yeah, could you, when I first saw that, I have to tell you, it was rather jarring. Um, I understand you're fond of the Second Empire style, but it is a fairly rare style in Manchester. And there are other ways to achieve, if I understood you correctly, more space on that third story. Gambrel roofs, shed dormers, a bunch of other things. So help me understand how you thought about that, please.
In terms of coming to the design.
I'd appreciate it very much if you could speak up. I'm having a terrible time hearing you.
I guess I didn't totally understand your question. How did we end up with the mansard roof or the Second Empire style or what?
Yes, that's the question.
Yeah, it really was, taking a look at Levin Central and, my fondness of it and, wanting to do that here on the site.
Okay, so you were not concerned from a sort of historic context, making it a little bit more rather like what's there. Because in the examples that you give, I think there are 13 or 14 different buildings and only the one is in the mansard style.
Right, and I think, 22 Union Cargo is its own unique style within Manchester, so.
Well, that's for sure.
Yeah, so, if you look at One Beach Street, right, it's, a one-story commercial space that, when we're looking at building residential units, it really wasn't inspiring to mimic something of that design aesthetic.
Well, I think One Beach had been 2 stories and the second story burned down in the 50s.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because if you do look at this plot plan, you can see that One Beach back in 1929 was original to that corner in the Victorian that was torn down and made way for cargo.
Okay, was that it, Sandy?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Mark Resnick is on Zoom.
Yes, hi. So I'm not gonna comment on the building design, but the site design, and with the building pulled out and, with the storefronts is much improved. But my question has to do with the storefronts themselves. So if I buy one of those units, I do not personally have, need for a first floor retail office, or I don't have a business to run out of there. But if I choose to lease the space to someone who wants to have a storefront, an art gallery, or just fill my space because I'm not using it, number one, is that going to be how, because you don't have the floor plans, is that space separate with a half bath that I'll be able to, in a small office, a room that storeroom that I'll be able to do that? So functionally, will it work that way? And secondly, will your condo docs allow for that as well?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I didn't show the floor plans. I didn't think that was part of the HTC's. No one commenting, but yes, if floor plan does accommodate a bathroom down there, we haven't fully discuss condo docs and the way that that space would be arranged. Partitioned in those documents, but it's a feature that we're incorporating into the design for multiple reasons, from feedback we got from town officials and
Right. Well, I think that's an important thing to ensure that is available to the homeowner to be able to lease it or rent it to another tenant to use for a commercial space. And it's also obviously important to the town and the whole downtown moving forward. For example, the planning board is looking at the downtown and visions for an initial feedback is that people do want a more vibrant, active streetscape all along Main Street. And although the building might be designed as such, it needs to be allowable to be used as that as well. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay.
Also on Zoom is MPC Nitrox. Oh, you've turned your video off. What
There we
happened?
go.
Turn your video back on. There we go. No, now you muted yourself.
How about now? That's good.
There we go.
All right. It's Mike Cravallo, 2 Jersey Lane. Appreciate the comments that are being made. It's really great that people care about the town and the landscape. I need to make 2 comments very briefly. One is that what's there is literally crumbling, right? We know that pieces of concrete falling on the sidewalk. I don't know how you could make this worse than it is. And you have made it immeasurably better. I think the design team has done a phenomenal job. I love the streetscape. This is a really tough property to design. I went by it today and was having lunch over at Cala's, and I was looking at it and thinking about this hearing, and I realized when we talk about streetscape, you look at the building behind it. I'm not sure what that address is, but it's got the curved roof, really funky, 70s, 80s, whenever that thing was built. Whoa, that's just, and what's been presented today in these drawings, I think, is an enormous improvement. It's a tough site. I love the idea that there's an option to put some commercial on that first floor, and I think it's a tremendous asset to the town. So kudos to the design team for getting it this far, and I'll leave it at that.
thank you.
Hi, John Harden, 54 School Street. A couple of questions, but also some points to clarify. I believe if a commercial use tried to go in that first floor, it would become a mixed-use building. Right? So let's just be careful when people are saying what could happen that can't happen currently. Okay, so a couple of things that been a big proponent of trying to get mixed use allowed in our general district. It should be by right. Unfortunately, these projects are coming before us where we should have mixed use, but they can't by right provide that, right? Same with the 5-foot setback in this spot. It's not really the right thing to do, right? But in case that's all zoning issues. I think in terms of the style of the building, there are moments in our town where there's a moment of hierarchy, right? It's not a coincidence that that style building is happening or has been built in the center of town in what was the kind of town square, right? It was a very nicely done building, not just a typical historic building, but it was done with a lot of care, just like they're shown here. So I think you can make an argument that that moment in town is also a moment of hierarchy, right? It's where you turn and everyone goes around that spot, everyone walks by this spot. It's kind of a hot spot. So I think it's very bold for you guys to propose that. I guess what I would maybe ask is if you guys could be even more bold and ask for a special permit to get mixed use on the first floor and to not potentially not have the 5-foot setback, mostly because both of those things are the right thing for the town. And I think it could help your your project as well. I would be concerned as you guys that you might have trouble renting or leasing or selling these with that first floor like it is, because it does feel quite, feels like a store, right? Where like retail, which I think is the right look for the town. But if it's not allowed to be a commercial use, that's a little weird. So that's a different process than you're doing now, but it's one that I would encourage the town to support and to almost invite them in to do that, because it would be a big event.
Yes, I'm Adam Zager, I'm counsel to the applicants. I just wanted to speak briefly, John, to your comment. I'll speak to the chair, but if I may, to the comment about the zoning. These are being proposed to have a home occupation on the first floor. It's customary home occupation, and it's, we think under the bylaw, that a very small, dry retail operation on the first floor of a building that has, residential upstairs, could include like a small, like, dry retail operation. There are some restraints that we have under the bylaw, where you can't, for a home occupation, goods can't be visible through the window. And there's also a restraint that the signage, I think, has to be maximum 2 square feet. So those are potential things that we could think about applying for variances to try to get a little relief and have these be a little bit more flexible, because the intention really here is to create units that and that was a big part of the reason that Chris and the team redesigned it in response to the input that we were getting from the town, is to create space that would be flexible, that could be used for these small retail operations. Cargo is a 4,000 square foot space that just hasn't been successful because it's very large for Manchester. So the hope is that sort of by creating these spaces that could accommodate a very small, home office or retail artist gallery type place, we'd actually be setting up the building for more success to the contribution to commerce in town than I think what was there before. So that's the hope on the zoning side.
I agree. I just worry another tenant couldn't rent the space though, right?
We haven't gotten into that. That's like a condo document thing that I'm sure we'll have to figure out, but
Is it a condo doc or is it zoning? Because it would be mixed use at that point.
not, well, actually, it would have to be, I think, by the homeowner, the occupant. So I don't think you couldn't lease it out to a store
Right.
and have a true independent third party there. So.
So
I've got a question, comment, yeah. So I'm interested in this streetscape view, and I'm wondering if you could put together a view walking down sidewalk one end and walking from the other. Right now, there is no wall or wrought iron fence or anything. It's really just a bit of grass, et cetera, and you've got the setback. But Sandy was getting to that a little bit. When you look at it from the top, yeah, it juts out a little bit. I think we'd all like to see a view when we're walking down the street. How is this going to look? And maybe there should be some sort of a low wall and wrought iron fence. I don't know, but we're used to having a facade that kind of curves around that corner, and we'll look at it from one view, and especially from 18 Union, because you've got a pretty steep, driveway that comes down there. So I'm curious.
I mentioned that earlier as a model, maybe even a relatively simple 3D box model. would
Yeah.
Give us what we need to see, because it's not, this flat facade is a little misleading.
Yeah, when you
Not
look at it, it looks
misleading,
like,
but it's
a flat building.
it's not what it's gonna look like. Did you give any thought to actually following the curve? I guess that'd be more expensive.
Yeah, we did, yeah, we deviated away from that.
As expense.
Yeah, expense and, lines, yeah.
Well, I'm interested in seeing that kind of a view.
Hey, Sandy Rogers again. Was there any thought of creating something that was less like a unified hulking type of building? There are a lot smaller buildings next to it, and you could potentially create something that appears like 2 buildings, especially if you have to move something back for that visibility on the driveway, as well as do something with the roof line. So it's not this massive type of impact on the street. We're used to having a lot of light also into the street, and this is going to be a lot higher in one uniform type of roof that's gonna really close in the space. So some type of, I don't know, almost you know, pushing one in and one out, leaving some white space there. I know you're trying to get as much as possible out of the building for residential purposes, but if there's something to be done as like Sandtown and Turner said, different roof line or something, that might help.
John Harden again, 54 School Street. I think actually the building does that really well, but we can't see it. That 3D view, I think would help a ton, because they're taking the corners out for a little balcony space on the second floor. So there is actually a lot of depth happening. We just can't see it because we don't have the right view of it. But one technical point that I forgot, looks like you guys have the setback from the bay to the street. I think you can make a really good argument that it's a face of foundation. So we could, again, I'm trying to get this thing as close to the street as possible. Use that to your advantage and pull it forward.
So you think that the building inspector would consider the foundation, not the window bay?
These are typically invest.
In fact, you're allowed a certain extension for things like bays,
And over
like signage, overhangs, and roof overhangs.
Sarah Crane again. I just wanted to again reiterate John's point about mixed use. And I think that my crystal ball, now, the planning board certainly is discussing a near-term zoning change that would allow mixed use. So I don't think that this is that making a actual third unit on a condo on the first floor that is actually separate from the others with mixed use is out of the realm of possibility. I can't predict what town meeting would do and all of that, but I think you'll see that coming soon. So to say that it's not allowed or it is probably not entirely, my crystal ball says that it will soon be allowed. And I think that is very much what people want to see. And Mark's point about condo documents, retail in the current zoning, you would have to have variance. I think it's really not a home occupation, but I wouldn't let that be the deterrent. I think that we'll see that coming soon. It's the right thing. I think a lot of us think it's the right thing to require in some cases. So, the applicant has taken steps to divide their land so that they would not be required to, because they just divide the land. So the current zoning does apply to, they're able to use the current zoning to their advantage for 3 years. Even if the zoning change happened, they would still be able to use whichever of the zoning, today's zoning or future zoning, as it was to their choice, and that's their right. I just wanted to clarify that, today's zoning and tomorrow's zoning might be.
Thank you.
Sarah Pierce, I see on Zoom, has raised her hand.
Yes, hi, Sarah Pierce, 9 Front Street. Thank you so much. I would first like to also commend the fact that you've moved the parking to the rear of this building. I think that was a lot of concern from residents that I spoke with, and there was a lot of concern by residents, I think, embracing the change of taking a pretty much single-story glass front commercial space and turning it into only livable space and market rate units. I'm questioning just a few things. I know you show the house to the left. That is set up and back though, correct? That's not at the same level.
Yeah, 18 units, that's the one you're talking about.
Correct, to
Yeah.
the left, that's set not quite a bit, but set up and back. So
It's
I
pretty
think-
significant, about 30 feet.
Right. So the height of this new building is almost 60 feet tall. And I feel like that's going to be very, not necessarily overwhelming, but it's going to be quite large comparatively to what is currently there now. Also, a lot of feedback and also sitting in on a downtown improvement project meeting about a week ago. The loss of commercial space is really important for Manchester, and we do have mixed use. I think it's 11 Central maybe that was shown on one of your slides that has clothing store in the first space along all, and I don't know, there will be commercial on where 7 Central was mixed with 3 units as well. So I do think it's important to really consider somehow trying to separate that first floor as retail space for the good of the town, the community, and also possibly adding some sort of green space either in between, or looks like there's a small section maybe to the right, but where people who are shopping or walking could stop and sit, have a coffee or whatever might potentially go into that first floor as retail. I'm also curious as to what the square footage is of each of these townhomes. It actually looks like 3 townhomes, to be honest, but it's 2. So what is the square footage of each of them?
Well, I'll start with your first question about the height. So it's not 60 feet. It's only 35, well, less than 35 feet from street level. It's actually 30 feet above average grade.
I'm looking at the roof line. It says 58.33.
Yeah, that's a survey point
Okay.
of the ocean. But if you see the dimension string to the left, it says 30 foot 6 inches above average grade.
Okay, I don't see that on the picture I'm looking at right now, but
Very good.
okay, sorry, I didn't see I was looking at the other horizontal stuff. Okay, so that's much, okay. That clarifies something there, so thank you. That seemed like very tall for that area, even
Yeah.
though there are other buildings up as you go up that are taller, but I just wonder to scale even so with the buildings to the right, they seem kind of large, and just what the square footage of each individual townhome was going to be.
Yeah, they're roughly like 2,500 square feet.
And so this is, as it stands now, this is not a retail space. This is something that is kind of mimics what is 3 buildings up, which was like an attorney's office like Don Halgren had, something like that, that you could, but it's not open to the public. You're not selling retail goods. It's not where people would visit or purchase or support the community in any way.
Yeah, the way we have it designed would be for a home occupation.
And is there a way to, I know a couple of people have spoken to that, but can that be, you said you can go for changes or variances or special permits to try to allow that?
Right now, we've designed a by right project based on Manchester zoning code.
Okay. Will you have to do any blasting in this area behind the building for any
No.
reason?
No, we intentionally kept the new foundation within the footprint of the existing foundation, so we would not have to do blasting or.
So there, but I do see some green space. That's the 5-foot setback in the front, sorry.
Yes. 5-foot setback, yes.
Okay, I guess just the biggest, things that I've heard from people and myself included is the loss of, 4,000 square feet of commercial space. We have very limited commercial space, and first floor is obviously ideal. I think that is going to feel very large in that space, completely as housing and no commercial. And I'm not quite sure how that would be made up in the town where we're lacking that commercial space. So that's quite a bit of frontage that is going to be taken away from the town, which is a shame. And I do agree with other comments that that's going to create quite a shadow in that area. Not to nitpick, but that's a big wide opening, and I do feel bad for the abutter. That's going to be very much in their backyard or front yard. So I am not anti-building. I think it's a good idea to add housing to Manchester. I do also think it's important to pay attention to the commercial piece, and the store frontage, because our town looks like we don't really have a lot to offer to people who do come to visit. So was just concerned about that and trying to represent a lot of other voices that were also really very fond of the cargo building and hoping that it would be able to be salvaged and renovated with many other buildings in close proximity that have gone down to basically rotten studs and boards and are being renovated. So I guess a lot of people were hoping that that would have more potential of being a commercial space using natural materials and bringing more people to town. We have a lot of buildings going up if you pay attention to what's happening in the village, and they're large units with very little green space. As a matter of fact, the green space that exists is actually turf. Artificial turf is going in front of buildings now, so that's a concern for me. I mean, I don't know what would happen if everyone did that. So I don't mean to go on and on. I just think once it's done, it's done. And just taking all of these materials, height, store frontage, loss of character, which I do think that beautiful, that the design is very nice. It's not a pretty building. It's just quite large for the space, and it is taking away commercial space. So I will end with that, but thank you very much for putting the thought and moving the parking to the back.
Thank you, Sarah. Do we have anybody else on Zoom? Sarah?
Sarah Melish, 11 Bennett Street. I support this project. I think that there's a lot of talk about putting retail on the first floor. Reality is we have an enormous number of vacant retail spots. I think that construction is very expensive these days, and I think that the value to the developer by forcing retail would substantially decrease the value of the condos. And I'm hoping that the facade does not look as massive as it looks on that screen, and that there is greenery in front. But I think the reality of today is we have to accept change, and this lot historically was a single family residence. And all of the houses, all of the lots from Gladstone down to School Street are residences, not commercial.
I think it's also the case, I mean, I heard what Sarah said, but I don't see anything in our guidelines or in the regulations that would empower us to be making a judgment as to whether this is commercial or residential. That's just not our purview.
Yeah.
We have to look at this in terms of its, whether or not it fits into the historic nature of the neighborhood, whether it fits in stylistically and architecturally, whether it's harmonious. That's that from the public byways, and that's it.
It's true, and I appreciate, Sarah, what you said about encompassing historic use as part of our conditions, but that is not our question. It's nice to think about, yes. Do we, Matt, you had another question, comment?
Well, when you read the first part, when you opened the meeting, was the word cultural in there?
Yes. Educational, cultural, economic, and general welfare of the public.
So I think you could make an argument that economic and cultural could fall under your purview. To, as in terms of commercial use versus residential. I think, but that's.
Well, but we're
Again,
also-
I mean, it's really limited, it's limited to exterior architectural elements, I'm sure the things that are visible from the street.
And preventing incongruous development. That's what
Incongruous, okay.
the factors to be considered by the commission are explicitly said, that we're looking at only things that are preventing the development of incongruous development.
And in its history, 22 Union has actually been residential for far longer than it has been commercial, so it's tough. And
As the owner of a building across the street that has, you know, a home office in it, you know, we are actually really hopeful for this new design with these spaces. I mean, to us, it's a perfect space for somebody who wants to have a gallery, or some use, you know, of that nature. We think it has a lot better chance to succeed than a 4,000 square foot retail space. I've had extensive conversations with Jason Balkin, who owns Allen's Pharmacy. I don't think he'd mind me saying it, just when he moved from that location to 40 Beach, he noticed a giant uptick in its business. It doesn't have parking spaces right on the street. As you're seeing on the plans, it only has really space for 4 parking spaces out back. You know, so we've had a lot of discussions about, do we go for something larger, a special permit, but the more we try to cram on the site, I think the feeling is that the less pleasant the experience will be for the people that are actually living there. So that the site itself sort of almost constrains you to a situation where you just can't put too much there because nobody's going to be happy.
You've in effect been living across the street from a warehouse.
Yes, I have. I've been in the basement
sometime.
Strange where.
Yes. A mystery to many of us.
Go, John.
Evelyn is a big supporter of this project, and we're really happy that Chris and his team are here. They want to do something that is as iconic as, it's an important site. You look up, lots of people we see walking by, they stop, they take pictures of the Wells House up the hill. It's a spot that needs an amazing design, and that's what Chris is here to do. And you know, I think he's thrilled that we're having this discussion about all these detailed architectural points, and hopefully making a lot of progress. I think meeting with everybody and hearing the initial feedback and getting rid of the front parking situation, you know, creating some space that can be used, you know, for commercial purposes is a big step. And hopefully we can continue it.
At the risk of maybe restating the obvious, it does seem to me that the odds that you would be able to see commercial use of those first floor units would be much higher if they could be leased separately, as opposed to just hoping that somehow magically someone's going to buy this unit who wants to have a home office. So I would back what we heard before, which is that it'd be great if you could find a way to negotiate with the town to have that.
What could be a zoning change that could absolutely be put on the table, and that's the beauty of, if it's built this way and then zoning changes to allow it to be used in a more flexible manner, well, then that's even bigger win-win for everybody.
Just a quick point from the historical point of view. When the train came to town, Manchester changed a lot, right? The center of town was here. Kind of feels like the center of town is down by Crosby's these days, right? And that's where the commercial center of town is. And so because of that, a lot of things that were, you know, like the retail has no parking here because it's horses and carriages and no one had a car. Things just change over time. So can't really look at historic use of buildings as a precedent or something because things change so much over time.
Okay, so are we done with the public comment and question period? Can we ask that you come back with some more details on the side views? Maybe a little more detail of the front in terms of some of the specific
Well, we can't see what the details of this panel.
yeah.
This
so
could be
some
anywhere.
more
If you only have
fine
the diagram to look
details.
at, it could be anything. It could be beautiful or it could be terrible. In implementation, right? I'm sure you'd agree. So if we could have that also, I'm really concerned about the roof, the other materials on the facade. So I think I'd like to see that addressed from.
Can you use some specifics about that?
Well, I don't, let's start with the roof. Asphalt, really? I know what that, I think I know what that looks like. Maybe I don't. Maybe you have a product that I'm not familiar with, but that does not sound like it's going to have the solidity, the feel of a really quality building that I would hope, because that mansard is such a big feature of this building. It's really
True, and if
jumps
you
out
look at 11, that's shingle, wood shingle.
I would,
11 sun.
I re-echo the shed roof on the dormers. I think that that doesn't look in it's an odd look when you compare it to the other examples that we've seen. The whole thing, to me personally, is a little busy in comparison to Manchester, but that's just me. I don't want to.
I would have to say in defense of asphalt, when you're looking at, say, the Robardi building, you can be on the other side of the common and you can see the whole building. Here, the only shot you're gonna get is walking in front of Adam Zager's house. That's as far away as you see this. And I don't know how much of the roof you see.
I think you're gonna see a lot because it's back
A
5
beach,
feet
I
and it's
think
only,
you'll see it.
Maybe you can
Coming up
beach.
beach.
it's only 39 feet tall.
Yeah,
You're gonna see it fine. And then the columns and the details on the cornice, on the columns, on the porches, on the panels. What's cementitious, what's not. All of that's going to be, I think.
Yeah, some of like the window trim kind of sills and, just a little finer detail.
I would vote almost to. This is a big project, obviously, and a lot of work is gonna have to go into each stage as you advance it. And I don't think any of us here want to unnecessarily hold things back, but on the other hand, without a finished drawing, we don't really know what we're approving. So maybe we have to find some process by which we advance towards the goal together. Giving you assurance as we move along that we are going in the right direction. But if someone came to us with an existing building and they wish to put in new windows, we would ask for total level of detail. We'd want to know exactly what the window model was. We'd want to know we'd want to know all of it. And if somebody's putting on this siding, it would be the same thing. So I don't think we should fall back from that in working through this project. But we also would want to find a way that we can not be an encumbrance.
Joe?
Madam Chair, just to clarify what Richard has said, for our next meeting, I'd like to address the windows. So that they're in more uniform with what's being proposed in the structure. The building at 18 Union next to that structure that they're proposing, that should be 4x1 windows to be in conjunction with what structures are at 18 and also to the right of the proposed structure. And just, to clarify what they will be and the lattice work to go around those windows. That's very important to be uniform in the structure so that the windows will blend in with what is currently there. And that is what the historic district is. And to clarify what we're doing. So when people come into the community, they'll say, oh, those all look the same. They're conforming. So that's what I have to say.
Thanks, Joe. I guess I'd also go back to the doors. So these are glass doors on the top level balconies.
They are,
And then on the second floor balconies, are those glass with a panel on the bottom, only glass on the top?
so yes. Yeah, more times.
Really, there's a panel in those those
On the
windows?
lower part of the doors,
Second.
panel, top glass.
Glass only on the top.
Yes, have, yeah, like.
Okay, so it's almost 7:30. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, how about we continue this meeting next week, 6 PM Thursday? You'll come back with some more detail, side views in particular. If you can get some kind of fine details on some of the windows and doors and roofing, zoom in kind of look, that would be great. If there were any of the comments from the general public that you want to reflect on and come back and respond to, please do that. And, we'll continue deliberating and maybe we'll have a vote next week.
As well.
Yes. Does that work for
Yeah.
everybody here? Okay, so do I have a motion to continue the meeting till next week?
I think you keep,
I need to do, keep it
well,
open.
okay, keep it open for public comment then as well.
Yeah, we'll take more
Okay.
comment by email during the week if we get it. But keep it open so that we can just start again next Thursday.
All right, a motion for continuance until the fall.
Joe,
Yes.
Richard, John,
Mhm.
Allison, me, yes, okay, so. Is that all I need to do?
Time and date, sir, 6 p.m.
6 PM, June 12th, next week. Here, I guess if we can get this room, or room 7, if, I'll let you.
I do appreciate feedback and comments. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Right, closing the Zoom.